speaker. He's been very patient. Dr. Mario Mendoza, an anesthesiologist with 13 plus years of combined experience in patient care at NIH, in clinical drug development, industry drug development, and medical device work. He now devotes his time to lifeundocumented.org. Phyllis mentioned it earlier in her remarks, an organization which he founded to give a voice to the voiceless and to stand up for the undocumented immigrant. Please welcome Dr. Mendoza.
Thanks very much. And well, first of all, thank you so much, Marianne and Phyllis and other organizers for having me. I'm humbled to have been invited. And of course, thank you, Susie. I see you out there. There you are. And I know that Karen Pasalak was not here, but thank you also for making that connection. So, and last but not least, you folks for coming out and making a commitment to be here and to spend the time, not only to have this discussion, but really a call to action as I see it from my perspective, not only acutely, but chronically. And so now and then in the long term, what can we do? And so let me start a little bit, and I'd like to steal from a little bit from what everyone has said so far, actually, and maybe address a couple of things and things in real time, Dr. Jorgensen, is it? That I just processed right now, actually. And so being an undocumented immigrant at 7, so a little bit on my background and my professional background I'll leave alone, and a little bit is on the flyer. I'm humbled with that introduction, so thank you. But going back to my experience when I was 7 years old, so why am I here? Separated from my family, so said I wanted to touch upon certain things that you touched on. We didn't want to leave El Salvador. Right? So this was a 38-year-old woman who had been a teacher since she was 18 in El Salvador. And what was she doing exactly that she received death threats from the government, the Salvadoran government? Well, she was working on something like the TIAA CREF, or Equal Rights and Equal Pay for Female Teachers. This was back in the late 70s, 1981, within the framework of a civil war-torn El Salvador at the time. And that lady was my mother. So she received a phone call at her school where she taught, and they told her, if you don't leave, we're gonna kill you and your 2 sons. So it was my brother and I, who was about 15 at the time, and I was 7. And my mother said, no, I'm not gonna go anywhere. She's quite an iron woman, by the way. If you ever meet her or see her, maybe on Facebook one of these days. But she said, no, I'm gonna stay here. This is my home. I don't wanna be separated from my family. Why would I wanna do that? This is where I have my profession. This is where I'm thriving, if you will. If you could say that in the middle of curfews at 6 p.m., where if you were found outside at 6:01 p.m., the government presumed you to be someone that was a rebel that was working against the government, and you were shot on sight. So in fact, my brother had a rifle put to his chest. Can you believe that 15-year-old would come around his bicycle at 5:59? Some nerve, huh? Imagine my poor mother and all the daily heart attacks that she had. So she ran outside and got in between that rifle and his chest.
Data, not fear,
this is a sergeant, and they eventually let him go.
Xenophobia,
so
racism.
We were, I guess if you could say,
so that's part of the remit
of
with lifeundocumented.org.
That year is when I was separated from my father.
This word,
the rest of our family,
action,
essentially,
if you will.
So she received these death threats after a month. Teachers were showing up dead everywhere, actually. So they were not empty threats. So we left. And she had other fellow teacher friends in New York. And that's why I grew up in the Bronx in New York. So we came there in 1981. So why did we run across the border? Why did we take that path? The 1981 are not much unchanged from the reasons that folks are leaving now. Gang violence, domestic violence, and whatever else, other threats that they may have. As a matter of fact, we sent money to family that just fled for Spain. And what were they fleeing? They were fleeing, their 12-year-olds were fleeing gang violence in the streets of Santa Ana in El Salvador. So it's still there. That instability was touched upon here a little bit, and I don't want to go too much into that, but yes, the US provided arms to the government that then threatened my mother, right? And so there was a part in the U.S. intervention and destabilization of those Central American governments. But right now is not the time for blame. It's time for action and to move forward. Right? We can't live in the past, but we have to certainly learn from it. So we left in 1981. My mother was a teacher. She took any job she could, and she cut meat in the freezer of a supermarket. That's the first job that she had. She sold encyclopedias in the snow door to door. She taught herself English. She still does, and we have a lot of fun with that, actually. We poke at her. She loves it. But she did whatever she could to protect her boys. And within 6 months in the Bronx, undocumented, she had secured an apartment for us, 1 bedroom with mattresses on the floor. But it was something that she worked for. We were neither eligible nor did we ever apply for public aid. Even if we were eligible, there's no way my mother would have done that. She had too much pride for that. She wanted to earn for what she received. And so because of that sacrifice, my brother and I we're blessed, and we have gone through the educational system here, and we have built pretty blessed lives for ourselves. I don't have 2 homes, and I am looking for an apartment in New York. So if you're going to rent out one of your homes, I would love that. Let me know. We'll talk later. So acutely, these concentration camps, and I like to touch upon that as well. What type of trauma may they be causing? Trauma that I hadn't thought about until today, actually. So I can tell you, not to elicit sadness from you, but a call to action and love from you that should translate into action. And for you to perhaps get an inside glimpse from a personal story, my story, into this. So I'm definitely not unscathed from all of that trauma. And I won't go into the after effects of that I've been digesting just recently. I'm 44 years old now, and I haven't had time to digest this trauma because I've been too busy trying to build a life for myself here that I could survive on. That there's nothing that has been handed to me, and I love that, actually. I've learned things the hard way, and I appreciate everything that I have every day, and really I give it all credit to God's grace. But certainly attachment issues, right? Trauma caused from the border crossing itself. So I crossed overnight, by the way, with a coyote. My mother's a loving mother. That's not what was supposed to happen. I was supposed to be driven across in a car, but I wasn't. So we ran across for 12 hours, 9 p.m. to about 9 a.m., across the Mexican desert and around Tijuana airport. So when I got there, dirtied, crying, and exhausted, my mom had a heart attack. She said, "Why are you exhausted and dirty? You were driven." I said, "No, I ran all night." I do remember helicopter lights, hiding in bushes, running as fast as I could, crying. I couldn't run anymore. The coyote picked me up at some point and carried me. Thank God we have a self-defense mechanism in our central nervous system that suppressed a lot of these memories, because I frankly don't want to remember too much from that time. My brother certainly does not want to remember being undocumented, going through undergrad, which he was blessed to be able to go to school and have that opportunity. But he was undocumented until he graduated, and the day he graduated, he received a green card. Why did we get a green card? Well, in 1986, there's an Immigration Reform Act under President Reagan. It essentially transformed into an amnesty act, an act of love, but it wasn't supposed to be that. It was just under tremendous pressure. It was supposed to be a border control act and punishment for businesses that hired undocumented immigrants. But instead, it allowed about 1.8 million of the 4 million undocumented immigrants to apply. It was a fully vetted process. We went through that process, and that's why I'm here speaking to you today. I'm forever grateful to this country, and I've never seen it in the state that we're in now. And I've never seen hatred have a voice like it does now. I've been fully aware of the underlying current, the underlying racism, but I've never seen it have a voice like it does now, and we can't sit still and do nothing about it. So, but here's what I propose, right? To go forward with love into action. And so that's what I'd like to do with my organization, is to collect these stories to humanize the undocumented immigrant. How will I meet them? You may wonder. Actually, we haven't touched upon that at all. Well, everywhere, every day. My Uber driver this morning was a DACA student. And so he's going to be in touch with me. What else do I want to do besides humanize these stories? I want to connect. I am a physician after all, so I think as a scientist, and I'd like to collect long-term data of where are they now, if you will. What are they doing now, and what are they doing 10 years from now? And that data I hope to support and affect policy change that's based on data, not fear, emotion, stereotypes, xenophobia, or racism. So that's part of the remit of lifeundocumented.org. I appreciate you being here to hear this, to disseminate this word and this call to action, if you will. I recently quit my job last week. I'd like to speak to that, not because I'm looking for a job, but let's talk. No. So I quit my job just to, I think, to speak to my commitment for Life Undocumented. I've worked in biotech as an MD, and I feel that it's time for my heart to be aligned with what I need to do and vice versa. And so I decided to push this organization forward, and I will do it. And it is like my child, and I am willing to take a bullet for the undocumented immigrant. I want to fight back with data and love. You won't hear any criticism of the administration directly from me. That will not be my place. So I'd like to invite you to take a flyer, if you will. I only call attention to that because I want full attention on this initiative, because I want to be able to speak up for undocumented immigrants. I've told Phyllis this and Susie, and it sounds like an exaggeration, but I want all the hatred that comes to them to come to me instead. That's how I feel on the inside. I feel like that's what God has called me to do at this time, and that's what I want to drive forward. And thank you so much for your time, and thank you for your attention. Thank you for having me.